Okay, this is part 4 of art quotes. This is from my book about quotes. It's called The Holy Grail of Wisdom Quotes by Pete Rogers. Okay, so we're just going through the art quotes. And again, I got thousands of pages of these. So some of them will be good, some of them will be kind of so-so, but I would collect all the quotes and keep the ones I thought were reasonably good. First one, Little Steven. The first responsibility of the artist is to educate himself, then to pass on some information to the direction of his audience. So basically, the way people learn art is, like they did in the Renaissance. You're apprentice to a master, you learn from the master, you copy the paintings of the great ones, and then gradually you can make your own paintings and innovate. I mean, that's how you become good. H.L. Mencken. The artist is not a reporter but a great teacher. It is not his business to depict the world but as it is, but as it ought to be. Okay, now that's a little bit of an Aristotle imitation. Aristotle said that poets are more important than historians because historians just show you how the world is. The poets, like the authors of the Iliad and the Odyssey, show you how the world could be. Like comparing Thucydides, the historian, and Herodotus, the historian, to Homer, for example, and the playwrights. Okay, Dennis Whaley. Never follow the crowd in what you do. The crowd has never produced anything of lasting value, quality, or beauty. Okay, so I think that's a good quote in the sense that if you're going to get good, it's like Beethoven said and Mozart said the same thing. You have to just trust yourself. You first of all got to develop your skills to the point where you can trust yourself. But once you trust yourself, you got to go with what you think is right. Because if you pander to the masses, so to speak, you'll probably end up doing something generic. And the great artists will agree on that. Oscar Wilde, lots of them have said the same thing. Okay, this is just something I noticed is that, I like a painting with people in it better than a landscape painting. A landscape painting is kind of like instrumental music. And I like, I look at Christmas light displays. I like it better if they have a nativity in there besides just the lights. At least a Santa and the reindeer or something. And like I said before, I think the Christians are the light of the world. You take bleak winter holiday, dark, cold, miserable, and you turn it into the most joyful holiday of the whole year. Okay, the next is Paul Johnson. And Paul Johnson, he's an English historian, and he is Catholic, and there's things I like about him, but there's other things about him that are kind of annoying, but I'll just give you some of his quotes. He said, "We are the happiest when we are creating." I think there's some truth in that. It's a lot of fun to create something. God gave me the gift of writing and the ability to draw and paint. I have made my living by words, and I have derived enormous pleasure throughout life by creating images on paper and canvas. So yeah, he could paint reasonably well, but he was a better writer, a historian. The art of creation comes closer than any other activity, just serving as a remedy for the ills of existence. And a lot of people have said that. They get a therapeutic release from writing. Okay, there's something cathartic about it. Nietzsche and others have said, the creative impulse it makes you happy. Part of that is just when you're obsessing about something, you're sort of in your default mode network part of the brain thinking about the past and the future, past and the future. And when you get involved in an activity, whatever it might be, exercise, playing a sport, or doing a creative work of painting or literature, you're pulled into the present, so you forget about whatever was bothering you. Paul Johnson wrote a decent book, Creators. A better book was Intellectuals. Here he says, creative originality of outstanding quality often reflects huge resources of courage. Yeah, that's true, because in order to do creative work, you don't usually get rewarded for it. You get punished for it. So you have to believe this is worth doing. You have to have an optimism somewhere in your mindset that it's worth providing. There's going to be somebody who benefits for it. Because there will be a backlash for it. Like Ralph Waldo Emerson said, for nonconformity, the world whips you with its displeasure. Okay, Paul Johnson continues. Writers are most powerful when they are recording, albeit transformed into fiction, their own deeply felt personal experience. For this reason, Charles Dickens always felt that David Copperfield was his best book. It's the most autobiographical. And I've noticed that too in some of these singers when they write songs about their life, like Eminem writing about the sadness and the frustration of his situation with his wife and his kids, his daughter and stuff. Those are some of his best songs. Because, in general, I think Eminem's kind of a scumbag, okay? But some of his songs, like about his daughter and stuff and missing her, man, they're great. Okay, Paul Johnson. Academics are excellent long-term promoters of a writer's reputation. So you have a good writer. It's good that academics preserve them, though. A lot of times, though, what they push into the children's book is crap. Like, somebody will tell me, "Oh, was Virginia Woolf a good writer?" I'm like, she was bonkers crazy. Any person who keeps trying to commit suicide, they're insane. Okay, they don't. They're not insane. They're insane in a bad way. Anybody whose view of life is that that's what they want, they're sick in the head. She was sick in the head. She's not that good of a writer. Or what's her name? Plath? I mean, there's real good writers. You don't need to look for people that behave that way. And they never promote somebody who really is great. Ayn Rand. I know everybody says she's a bitch. Fine. But when you get past it, just go read her quotes. There's never been a woman whose quotes I've ever read that had such a striking effect on me. They're amazing. They're amazing how smart she is. And she dug deep into understanding a lot of deep philosophical stuff. That's why I went and read her books, because I learned a lot from her books. Okay, this is Paul Johnson continuing. Most people are resistant to ideas, especially new ones, but they are fascinated by character. Extravagance of personality is one way in which a pill can be sugared and the public induced to look at works dealing with ideas. Massive works of the intellect do not spring alone from the abstract workings of the brain and the imagination. They are deep-rooted in personality. Yeah, quite often they say whatever the novelist writes, it's the opposite of their own life. Like Jane Austen, Pride and Prejudice. She herself was sad that she wasn't able to find a husband. So she wrote about finding husbands. Okay, that would make sense. People write about what they care about, what's interesting to them and relevant to their own life. Paul Johnson continues, thanks to crass publicity techniques, novels are not so much selected by readers as hyped by literary power brokers. Readers are conned into buying trash or into thinking mediocre stuff is a masterpiece. Yeah, that's true. A lot of stuff that is pushed on the public is the garbage. A lot of times the good stuff is not even known. And like, look at art. There's actually some really good artists. This guy's one example, Arnold Friedberg. He's a great painter. Just look up Arnold Friedberg. You'll be amazed how good his paintings are. His best painting is Prayer at Valley Forge. He illustrated the stuff for the Ten Commandments movie, with Charlton Heston, directed by Cecil B. DeMille. He's an awesome artist. You'll be amazed how good he is. And there's a lot of other great contemporary artists like Robert Bateman and stuff, but almost nobody knows about him. Don Troiani, Mort Kunstler, they're great, but they never get into museums. They never get talked about. Nobody knows about them. Because I used to actually think that there wasn't hardly anything good from the 1900s, but it turns out there was a lot of good stuff from the 1900s. It's just that nobody knows about it. The museums have gone insane with all this modern art nonsense, and they don't show the good stuff that was done. You can find it when you buy the books of the individual artist. Okay, Stella Adler. Life beats you down and it crushes the soul. Art reminds you that you have one. Bertrand Russell. In art, nothing worth doing can be done without genius. In science, even a very mediocre, moderate capacity contribute to a supreme achievement. I actually think that's an unfair statement, because lots of people do good contributions to art that aren't necessarily the top of the line experts. Okay, there's look at the chorus of the Mormon Tabernacle Choir. Every great Renaissance artist had a whole bunch of assistants. Raphael would have over 50 assistants at a time. Okay. Okay, the next quote is from Goethe. Johann von Wolfgang Goethe, the great German writer. Sort of like what Shakespeare is to England, that's what he is to Germany. Through practice, teaching, reflection, success, and failure, and again reflection, a man's mind unconsciously will link what he acquires with his innate gifts so that a unity results which will leave the world amazed. Yeah, basically, a great artist just keeps studying and learning and acquiring new little techniques. And like Schopenhauer says, when someone does it that way, with a mind towards, learning, understanding, developing insight, and figuring something out and creating something beautiful, they will progress towards that. Versus if it's your typical professor, they'll simply categorize a bunch of stuff, but they won't put it all together ever because they don't really care to do so. Like Schopenhauer said, there's few things more rare than a real professor, a real philosopher amongst philosophy professors, because they're sort of doing it for the job, for the money, because it's pleasant, rather than trying to really understand philosophy. So anyways, that's it for part 4 art quotes.